So the other night I mentioned this same koan about sharp and round. And I mentioned that Sesshin, the teacher who gave this description of reality, was the great-grandson of Shitou, the composer of the poem about the gathering. And I knew that, but I didn't know how I was going to say it or how it was going to come out, and it came out as the student of the student of the student, something like that. And I got kind of caught up with that student of the student of the student thing. And I knew who the teachers were in that student of the student of the student. But there was something calling to me to look into it more deeply. And it felt like something related to the interwoven, not interwoven, that we're spending time with. I've been sitting back there looking at these tonkas, and it's like round, sharp, right? Here it is. And I think also I noticed in the tonkas how there's a little snowy peak back there. And all of these Hawaiian things, all of these native Hawaiian animals and foods, and well, they were created by the mountain. Mauna Kea is snow-covered, so there's, they're interwoven even here. And I'm sitting in the middle. And that's where we sit, all of us, I think. The place that we stand, the place that is ours. It's in the middle. It's not even a place, really. It's more like a place where things pass through, going in each direction, kind of a place. Is that a place? It's not a physical place, it's just where those energies meet, right? Shitou, who wrote that poem about the gathering, wrote another poem that he's called The Grass Hut, which is a kind of metaphor for his practice. He talks about building a grass hut as a description of building a practice and living in it with the practice. And there's one part in that poem where he says that the person living in the grass hut is not caught inside, outside, or in between. And so that true place that we stand in is, we're not caught there even. The true place is to not be caught anywhere. I hear Shitou noting about his practice and his experience. And how, I don't hear that meaning, I've got to be on guard about getting caught. Because that's just another way of getting caught. What it means for me is how grateful I am when I do get caught, when I notice. Even when I don't notice, it's, if I don't notice, I don't notice, so I'm not anything about it. I'm suffering because of it. And how there even clarity and delusion are woven and interwoven. As my noticing that my getting caught becomes the opportunity for me to notice that I'm caught, which is clarity, and I can't have one without the other, and on, interweaving dark and light, wisdom and delusion. So, as I was following this, I don't know what it was, calling, something was calling me to look into the student of the student of the student thing. And I noticed that I did it the way I tend to read books, which is from the back to the front. And it's not because I've studied Japanese and that's the way Japanese books are. I've done that as long as the first time I can remember doing that back to front thing was comic books, because I wanted to see what great authors there were on the back of the comic book, you know, those glasses that were going to be X-ray vision glasses and things like that. That's right to there. And then I sort of worked my way to the front. And that's kind of what I noticed happened with this. It's kind of a genealogy, I guess. I'm not into genealogy, but when we talk about lineage, it's kind of genealogy. And how much that is about being interwoven and not interwoven. At the genetic level, we are, right? And the way that manifests in my life, I notice, like, oh, there's my dad, oh, there's my mom, and they're woven. It's part of who I am, is that interweaving of who they were. And I have a place of my own that I stand. And I am an interweaving, and I am not an interweaving. And that's not sequential. It's not like, well, now I am and now I'm not. It's simultaneously moving and changing. I notice my mind wants to make it a thing. Make it, you know, this and then it's that, but no, it's not that clear. You know, just as the threads in a weaving aren't that clear, where do they go? Can't follow them. They get all lost in each other. So I started with Sesshin, the one who talked about this round and sharp thing. And I thought, okay, who is he, really? I didn't know much about him, not really. Turns out he studied the sutras a lot. And he was pretty good at it, and was kind of making a living going around, giving lectures, well attended and everything. And at one of those lectures, someone asked him a question. And they said, you know, what is ultimate reality? What is the Dharmakaya? What is Buddha nature? Whatever words you use. And Sesshin said, it's without form. Okay. But the listener continued. He says, well, if it's without form, then what was it that the Buddha passed down to his disciple Kashyapa? I mean, he said he was passing down something, but it's got no form. How do you pass it down? What's he passing down? He asked Sesshin. And Sesshin's response to that was, excuse me, it is without flaw. When he said that, one of the other people in the audience, whose name was Dao Wu, who was a teacher already himself, but he was traveling around, you know, learning like teachers learn. And it's interesting, there's a couple of accounts, and most of them try to make it sound like, you know, unable to restrain himself, or without thinking, or it says he laughs out loud when he hears Jashan say that. And the scriptures try to make it sound like it's not impolite or something. He didn't mean to do it. It's like sneezing, but I don't know. He laughed without moving his lips or tongue. And Jashan said, "Why are you laughing?" Okay. And Dawu said, "Well, you might understand the sutras, but you need a teacher to guide you to know about Buddha nature." And Jashan's response was, "Well, where can I find somebody like that?" And I find that to be a very round response. He's got a reputation as an expert on the sutras, and he's just got told he doesn't know what he's talking about, really. And his response is not defensive. He says, "Oh," because he knows that Dawu is right, Maybe you've had the experience of going in to talk with somebody about a koan that you've been spending time with, and you've got something that feels true to say about it. And you say it, and the response is, "That's not it." And you know they're right? But you had to say it to know that they were right. And it's not a mistake, it's just part of the process. And I feel that in Jashan's response. Oh, okay. Where do I find somebody like that? And Dawu refers him to one of his Dharma brothers who studied together. They studied together under Yao Shan, who was Shitou's student. So starting to unravel things a little bit here. And how interesting that is. Dawu is a teacher in his own right. I'll teach you. He could have said that. He says, I'll talk to you later or something. But he says, no, he sends him to his Dharma brother, whose name was De Cheng. But he had another name. He's called the Boat Monk. Because he studied, we'll get to that. So, Jashan goes, he doesn't waste time because he knows that there's something he wants to be clear about. And he goes and he finds the boat monk. I'm thinking when Jashan heard Dawu's laugh, that was a pretty sharp experience, right? That was not round, right? It's interesting how you can feel the world that way, round, sharp. I've been doing that for a while, round and sharp, round and sharp. What's round and what's sharp? When Todd rang the bell just now, when the bell first hits, it's sharp and then it's round. And then I don't know where the sharpness and the roundness, where does the sharpness end and the roundness begin? And I don't know. And at the beginning of a meditation period, that roundness of the bell going whoa, 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 gets even rounder in the silence. So Jashan went to see the boatman. Dawu described his Dharma brother as, when he's giving the directions to Jashan, he says, he doesn't have a tile to cover his head, nor a speck of earth to stand on. And that's a recommendation. And Jashan understood, yeah, that was a recommendation. That sounds good to me. I realized that speck of earth is an interesting reference. The Chinese and Japanese characters for temple are composed of two parts. One part is a measurement, which means like an inch, something like that, a very small something. And the other part is earth, speck of earth. And the boat monk didn't have a temple, and he didn't have a speck of dirt. He didn't have a speck of earth, right? A temple is just a speck of earth. Right? Every speck of earth. It's a story about the Buddha taking a walk and stopping and looking around and saying, wow, this would be a good place to have a temple. And one of the people with him grabs a blade of grass, shoves it in the ground, and says, the temple has been established. That speck of earth, right there. That true place where we stand. That temple. Every place. So he gave up lecturing. He went and found the boat monk, and it was a long journey on foot, and he was in a hurry, so he didn't spend a whole lot of time keeping up his appearances, and he arrived looking pretty disheveled and dirty and everything. And the boat monk saw him coming and says, what monastery are you from? You know, and he says, I'm not from any monastery. Otherwise, I wouldn't look like this, he says. A little defensive, huh? So then the boat monk says, oh, so what do you look like? Things are getting a little sharp. Jashan responded, I am beyond sight and sound and consciousness. Roundish. Is that so, says De Chang. Well, what do you think about that? And various renditions, some say, and there are many pictures of the boat monk hitting him with his oar, knocking him into the water repeatedly. Others have him grabbing him and holding him under. I kind of like that one. It's more intimate, right? And and he holds his head underwater for a long time, and he lets him up and he says, speak, speak now! But before he can say anything, he throws him down again. And he pulls him up again, and he says, speak! And again, he throws him down into the water as soon as he opens his mouth. And that's when he woke up. Jashan did. And he came up bowing gratitude or something. Now, the boat monk was very happy about this because when he was a student under uh, Yao Shan, together with Dao Wu. There was another student named Yun Yan. And they all got approval to teach her at the same time. And the boat monk said, well, you guys, you got to go out and, carry on our teacher's teachings by establishing a temple and all. But, I don't have that in me. I'm too undisciplined, he said. I like to do what I like to do too much, and I like to be in nature. So, but keep in touch. Because, if you meet a student who seems like they got something going for them, send them down to me, please, so I can pass on what our teacher gave us, and how that's done out of love, not obligation. You can't not do it. You don't have to be a teacher to do it. You do it just by living your life, practicing your practice. So, when Dao Wu refers Jia Shan to the boat monk, he is fulfilling the request the boat monk made when they all left their teacher. When he was requested, hey, if you meet somebody who's good, send them down to me. And he did. He sent Jia Shan down. And how, why, that way that the connection between a teacher, you meet somebody and there's a connection, or you meet somebody and there isn't. And that happens, and that's not wrong. It's just the way it is. It's like falling in love with somebody and having a life together. That's just the way. You don't do that with everybody. So I like that part of the, because there's the interweaving and the not interweaving. Dao Wu, Yun Yan, the boat monk, all interwoven together as they practiced together and became everything together. And then went off on their own, not woven, not interwoven, but they were still interwoven. And it's not like, even though they were doing things differently in different places, they were still together, but they were apart. And it's all happening at the same time. We can't understand that, but we know it. We can feel it. Listening to birds. Listening to the buzzsaw. The music. And then Deshen tells him, I studied with my teacher for 30 years, and now you've got everything that I got from him. And go off and hide somewhere in the mountains. He says, go to a place with no trace, but don't hide in a place with no trace. Okay. And I'm feeling the interweaving of, well, that's what the sixth patriarch was told, Shitou's teacher, for a short time. By his teacher, go off for 10 years and hide. And what's that about? Right? I don't know what it's about, but I can see the thread going through and feeling the interwovenness, the DNA. And feeling that thread going through and the connections, I feel closer to these people who are practicing just like we are practicing. and the more threads that I'm aware of, the more what we're doing, all of us here together, we're doing what they were doing, individually and together, and supported by that. Doing it together with them as they do it now in the 7th century. That's a very round place to feel into. So De Chang, after he says to the boat monk, after he says to Jia Shan, okay, I've given you everything, and he says, I've finally caught the big golden fish. You know, he's got somebody to pass it on to. I finally caught the big golden fish. Around this time, it was said that Zen masters caught their students by fishing with a straight hook, held above the water. And that's where you get the good students, the ones that jump out of the water and impale themselves on the hook. I finally caught a big golden fish, and they stayed together for a night, talking, meditating. And in the morning, the boat monk said, well, you don't have to think about me anymore. And he got in his boat, and he rowed out to the middle of the lake, he turned it over, and he disappeared. He was never seen again. Left without a trace. That's interesting, isn't it? That's kind of a sharp thing. He just disappeared like that. So, Jia Shan went off and found a hermitage in the mountains and sort of stayed low. And was not lecturing about the sutras anymore. He was living it, you know. He was teaching it. And one day, a story about him that the Japanese teacher Dogen, when asked to describe his practice, as one continuous mistake. Which I kind of, I was curious about that. I wondered, well, what does it really, what are the characters that say that are translated one continuous mistake? And the closest I've come so far is a section that says, no mistake, no practice. Pretty concise. No mistake, no practice. So what is a mistake? What's getting it right? What's getting it wrong? Weaving, interweaving, not interweaving. Round and sharp at the same time. So he said, okay, I'll go to Queen Yuan. I think I'm saying his name right. When he arrived at Queen Yuan's place, and was there for a while, it was Queen Yuan who made the remark about having many two-horned cattle, but having just one unicorn will do, about him. And how Shitou's awakening with Queen Yuan happened because of a passage he read. But it was, again, a passage, and I'm thinking, oh, the sixth patriarch, he overheard a passage being chanted from the Diamond Sutra. This is a passage that opens up Shitou. The passage he read was, only those can be called holy who view the world in such a way that they see themselves in all things. Sounds pretty good. Only those can be called holy who view the world in such a way that they see themselves in all things. And he read that, and they said he pounded the table. and yelled out, "Only those are holy who have no selves, for everything is their self. So who can speak of you and me and one self and another's self?" And that was his awakening. No self. All self. Interwoven, not interwoven. I want to try an activity. And I have pieces of paper that I'm going to ask you to pass around. If I don't. And there should be enough for everybody. Oh, water wins. Thank you. It's simple. It's a little kind of experiment, I guess. That I bumped into. So as you look at this sheet of paper, you'll see two forms labeled A and B. And the question, which is Kiki and which is Booba? Okay? It's simple, right? Now, let's do it by a show of hands. How many people think Kiki is A? 3. How many think Kiki is B? Uh-huh. Thank you. How does that work? Huh?
I don't know, it seems obvious.
Sorry?
Yeah, Kiki's sharp and D is sharp.
Yeah, but the thing is, and this is called the Kiki Booba effect. It's a real thing. It was devised in 1920 by an American-German psychologist named Kohler. Right? He used different words, Malumba instead of Booba. I can't remember what the other one was. But it says something kind of profound about everything, I think. The psychologists are saying, well, this is how, this is profound about the way we learn language. They've done experiments with this, asked like this, showing people, and some people 2 or 3 or 4, and then everybody else is like that. True in 90 different languages. True for children as young as 2.5 months before language. Jiashan said, sharp, sharp, round, round. That is the nature of reality. And that's just why, that's how we know. So, you might just play around with this and notice what's sharp and what's round, and what's kind of roundish sharp and sharpish round. And, some people walk roundly and some people walk sharply. And it's not about good or bad, it's just appreciating, some birds hop and some walk. And it's like that. And my noticing, that kind of bird hops and that kind of bird walks, and I'm closer to it, more intimate with it, more interwoven with the birds and the trees and everything. So, I think that's it for me. We have a little bit of time if anybody had anything to ask or say. Chris?
When you're talking about the boat moment, tipping over the boat and disappearing, then how that would seem sharp.
I said sharp, yeah.
Yeah, you said sharp.
Mm.
I thought it was like the bell, which was at first sharp, and then it got round.
Oh, nice.
And a lot of things are like that. They're first sharp and then they become round. Like things, the way things feel.
Yeah.
Like,
You mean like sensations?
Study.
Mm.
You know, you got the sharp, and then it was round. You said, oh, it's like kiki boo boo.
It's just a kind of lens to look at the world through. We're always looking at it through some kind of a lens. And you know what? Look, how about this lens? You know, appreciating that. Yeah. Well, actually, thank you, Chris. I was thinking about when losing a loved one and how that sharp that feels. And how in the midst of the sharpness of the pain, there's that being enveloped in the love that is there, or I wouldn't feel the sharpness. Yeah.
This is this a little bit like seeing with your ears, hearing with your eyes?
Oh yeah, that was part of my talk, wasn't it? I can get to that. Yun Yan, who studied with Dao Wu and the boat monk under Yao Shan, had a student named Dong Shan, who wondered about if insentient beings can teach the Dharma. Insentient beings would be like trees, plastic chairs. And this is a question that just really got to him. And when he came to some sort of intimacy with that question, he composed something that speaks to that. How marvelous, he said. The Dharma expounded by non-sentient beings is inconceivable. Listening with your ears, no sound. Hearing with your eyes, you directly understand. And yeah, actually, this Kiki Buba thing is used a lot in research about synesthesia, and the way that actually blind people are learning to see with their ears. And it's not because they hear things, but it's, it's scientific thing. And actually it's not that interesting other than like, yeah, well, Jiashan back in the 8th century said, yes, science is catching up with ancient wisdom. But yes, it is about that, very much. And how that opens up, like, this is sight and hearing, isn't it? So you can see, you can hear with your eyes, you can see with your ears, you can touch with your nose, sense, taste, all of that, interwoven and not interwoven. And it keeps on going and weaving on